11, we finally graduated from Rule 10, and we're moving to a new rule. Rule 10, he spent a long time on that one, because that was like establishing the thought form, was a very important one. And Rule 11 assumes the thought form is already pretty much potently established. The creation is on its way. Now what do we do? We've got the idea, we've got the planning stage, we've got all the ingredients together. We're ready to proceed and in creating something, whether it be a business, musical score, or a statue, or whatever it is you want to build, or an organization.
Molecule.
A molecule? Hey, that's a good idea. So,
why didn't we think of that?
Well, once you got all the ingredients together, where it's now definitely going to happen, is where Rule 11 tells us what we're supposed to do here. He says 3 things the worker with the law must now accomplish. First, ascertain the formula which will confine the lies within the ensphering wall. Next, pronounce the words which will tell them what to do and where to carry that which has been made. And finally, utter forth the mystic phrase which will save him from their work. Now, unless you really studied this in depth in the past, that probably gives you no idea what to do. Once you got everything in order, you might read this over and you think, confine the lives within the ensphering wall. Yeah, I can do that.
Get right on it.
Yeah. First of all, he's going to go into the analysis of this so we can get some understanding out of it. And then he's going to talk about salvation from our thought forms. And then he's going to talk about salvation from death. So he starts out by analyzing these sentences. And he tells us a creator who has followed the rules so far has taken an idea. He's clothed it in mental and astral matter. And he says, therefore, a vital entity on the verge of materializing upon the physical plane is there. And nothing, it should be noted, can now stop its emergence into objectivity except the express act of will of its creator. Okay, so anyway, the plan has moved forward. The organization or business or whatever it is going to manifest unless the guy in charge, the creator, puts a stop to it, sees there's some problem and ends it. But unless he puts on the brakes, well, it's going to manifest. Now the question is, we want it to manifest, but we want it to manifest so it's a good thing. It's a good creation, and that's some of the keys talked about in Rule 12. Creations, he says, do not always manifest as planned, especially those clothed in astral and lacking mental matter. So, in other words, when we create, a lot of people put too much attention on the emotional self and their feelings, their desire, nature. To have a successful creation, the mind has to step in and be involved and calculate, put some common sense into it. For instance, you've probably known people that have jumped into multi-level like Amway or something like that, and they think, boy, I'm going to make $1 million really fast. I'm going to get everybody involved, and they get all emotionally charged and get all their neighbors irritated. And they operate completely on their feeling nature, and they don't have enough common sense involved to see that, you're not going to build this multi-level organization on 2 hours a week like somebody made you think. It would actually take a lot of work to make this thing manifest. So he says, then when it does manifest, if it's done with too much emotion and not enough mind, it's not going to work very well. So it eventually can fail. The mind has to be involved to make the creation a success. And this is really important. Let's see here. So he says, those clothed with both the astral and the mental are much more potent. But on the other hand, they can be dangerous depending on the quality of the magician. Okay, so when the mind steps in, it can create, help you create successfully. But there's a difference between the black magician and the white magician. The white magician creates for altruistic purpose of serving other than self. The black magician concentrates on service for self. And they both use the same principles up to a degree. And so they both use the feeling and the mind. And if the intent is not good, the creation can actually do more harm than good. So he points out that it's very important that when you finally get the ability to manifest your creation, that the intent behind it is positive for service to humanity, or else you can wind up doing more harm than good. There's an occult basis for the statement that if one desires a thing sufficiently for a long enough period, then he will possess it. And so in other words, he's repeating here a statement that's in many self-help books, that persistence is the key. If you're persistent and desire something long enough, you will eventually have it. But when we do have it, we want to make sure it's a positive thing that can be used for the benefit of mankind. And now the creation can not only be harmful or beneficial to others, but also for the creator himself. So as creators, we want to make sure our creation benefits not only others, but also ourselves. And he says many people, speaking of these rules, use them instinctively, but are not aware of that they are. So when we see a successful business person, he's used some of these principles of white magic that we've talked about, but he doesn't know anything about the Alice A. Bailey books or ancient wisdom, but he just instinctively picked up the right principles to use. It says a white magician works with both the astral and the mental manner, but not an emotionally centered person is consciously bringing into stage when his inner purpose and plan can be demonstrated. He holds the thought form in his consciousness and gives it shape and energy through the power of his own one-pointed focus. So we have to hold the thought form in our consciousness. We create this thought form. We're on the verge of manifesting, and especially as we're on the verge of manifesting, we must not back down. And many people do. They don't go that one last mile. And reminds me of a story Napoleon Hill told about this guy that was mining for gold in the old Wild West days. And he just got frustrated. He thought there was supposed to be gold in this area that he was mining, and he just quit. And he had all this expensive equipment, and he sold it for like 10 cents on the dollar to this guy that was a pretty smart guy. The guy that bought it hired this mining engineer, to look over the situation and ask him what he thought about the prospects of getting gold. And he said, well, if you dig just a few more feet, in this particular area, you should be running into a pretty major vein. And so the guy dug one more foot and he hit a major vein of gold and become one of the richest guys in the West. And what was funny about the story was word got back to the guy that he missed the big vein by 1 foot. He just needed to go one more foot, and that just really plagued him. That bothered the heck out of me. But instead of just feeling doomed and feeling sorry for himself, he went into another business venture. I think it was insurance, and he became wildly successful because this time he says, I'm not going to give up this time. I'm going to go that one more foot. And he kept thinking as he was in the new business venture, I got to go one more foot. And he became wildly successful. So that guy learned an important lesson. So that's in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. If you ever get a chance, that story is one of my favorites. We're told that in the rule under consideration, the aspirant has 3 things to do. First, ascertain the formula, which will crystallize the form he has built, in much the same way that we architects and bridge builders do. Now, the formula has a relation to the thought form. So ascertain the formula. So when he puts it in that prospect, then we can understand it. We can understand if you're going to build a bridge, you need to have all the mathematics down, so when the bridge is built, it doesn't fall apart. You need to have the blueprints all in front of you. Once you have the blueprints, the formulas all down, then you can visualize that bridge being built. All you need to do is just go through the procedure, and the bridge is just going to manifest. Now, for a person that doesn't know anything about bridge building, all the math involved and all the blueprints, they're just like gobbledygook to them. It doesn't mean anything. But to those who understand, they can see that bridge being built, and they can understand all the principles involved. Next thing he says, pronounce the words which will tell them what to do. And he says, will give the form vitality, and so carry it forth into the physical plane. He says, these are words of power. Now, when he talks about words of power, we often think, well, these are words given by the masters, certain formulas, and there are such words, but words of power are more than that. Words of power are words where you take an idea and you put it into words that other people can understand. Now, when we read this rule, like I said, for most people it would be beyond their understanding. It just sounds like fanciful words, but they have tremendous meaning behind them. And so the words of power are words worded in such a way that it brings understanding and motivation to the people that hear those words. And these are words of power. So to get people excited about like the molecule or anything we're going to build, an organization, a business, put the words in such a way that the people, the builders, are being motivated and they're very enthused about going ahead with the project.
It would be like saying, I think it's in Alice Bailey books, saying, so be it and so it is. Or
Yeah,
like
right.
a captain of the ship would say, make it so.
Right. That's those are kind of words of power too, yeah. Okay, the third, he says, utter forth a mystic phrase which will detach the thought form from his aura and so save the drain upon his energies. Now, he says, utter forth He will utter forth a mystic phrase which will save him from their work, and that's what he's commenting on. This mystic phrase, he says, will detach the thought form from his aura, and so save the drain on his energies. Now, one of the problems that a creator has is his creation. He's put a lot of energy into it. And then as it begins to manifest, if he micromanages too much, it puts a drain not only on him, but everybody else. And so it interferes with the correct manifestation of the thought form. And so he has to detach himself somewhat and let other people in the group begin to work on their own without the initiator interfering, so that it can like have a life of its own. And so, and for group work, among in the ancient wisdom and the new age and different aspects, the same thing. People have to be able to jump in and participate in the creation of their own free will using their own intelligence. And this not only helps the creation, but it saves the creator, because it saves him being drained of his energies. So he can think to himself, okay, these guys have relieved me of energy, so I can focus energy on the next step or on something else that's very important. So preserving the energy of the creator, he says, is an important thing. And another thing he says is important is to not get too close to your thought form. If you get too close to your thought form, then you concentrate on the relationship more than the purpose. Okay? So this can happen in business. Say the business owner either falls in love with somebody or just establishes a real good friendship. And then let's say they start screwing up. Is he going to be able to fire him? Is he going to be able to boss him around or tell him what to do? No, he's now so close to them that he's not being able to manage them effectively or let them do their job effectively. The relationship is so close, it interferes. And so the white magician must make sure that relationship doesn't interfere with the purpose of the creation. The purpose of the creation has to come first. He says, thus we have represented spirit, soul, and body. The process applies to all creations, from a solar system to a planet to a business to a group and to an atom, and or to the cells in your body. All creation follows this formula that he talks about. You ascertain the formula, you pronounce the words, and you detach yourself from the thought form. He says this has to be done in all creations. And he says the planetary logos did it in creating the Earth. The solar logos did it in creating the solar system. And it's the eternal principles. It says one of the main necessities before occult aspirants at this time is to endeavor to think in terms of the one reality, which is energy itself and nothing else. Therefore, it is of value to emphasize in our discussions of this obtuse subject the fact that spirit and energy are synonymous terms and interchangeable. So he says there's only one energy in the universe, and this is the life energy. From the essential life energy in the universe comes everything else. And it's kind of what I've written about in the molecular relationship. In the beginning was the purpose, just like a line. In other words, and then the line vibrates and produces the wavelength. The wavelength, then you have the top of the wavelength, one aspect, light, and the bottom of the wavelength, love, and the center, willpower and purpose. And so you have that trinity by the life energy in motion. And the life energy is, he says, is the one true energy in the universe. And matter and energy are interchangeable. Science has now proven that. When they exploded the first atomic bomb, they had, what, a couple grams of actual matter changed into pure energy. And science proved at that time that matter and energy are interchangeable. So, and he points out that that was a great step in harmonizing science and religion. When science proves that everything is energy, and religion teaches, spirituality teaches that everything is spirit. We have spirit, and matter is merely concretized spirit. So we have teachings of spiritual teachings and scientific teachings in harmony on this important subject, and this can bring, he says, religion and science together. He says people are confused about what is organic and non-organic, but he says life is everywhere. Life is in the what science calls non-organic. But he says we need to understand what life is, what energy is, and what becoming and being is. The answers to these can be discovered by the initiate through the intuition. And he says people have different levels of understanding of these different subjects. He says the only true biologists are the initiates of the mysteries. They're the only ones who really understand true biology, he says. For they have an understanding of life and its purpose, and are so identified with the life principle that they think and speak in terms of energy and its effects used by the planetary hierarchy, and are based on a few fundamental formulas which concern life as it makes itself felt through its three differentiations: energy, force, and matter. Now he talks about energy and force quite a bit, and it's important that we understand the difference between energy and force as he explains it. Anybody got any idea what the difference between energy and force from a metaphysical point of view is?
Well, it's like potential energy and kinetic energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, force is the movement of energy, and which is used to generate power. You just have latent energy just sitting there, and then you apply forces to it, and then you generate power. And it's like water out of a dam. Water can just sit there unless it's acted upon. It produces power.
The basic difference from his point of view is that energy is more connected to the life aspect, to the spirit, and force is more connected to the form. Now, Dion Fortune gave a really good statement. She says this: a form is simply a force which is not free to move. So we have say what caused the explosion in the first atomic bomb was uranium-235. Just a couple grams of that turned into pure energy. And so before the explosion, we had all that force in there that was locked in there and not free to move. So the force is what's locked into matter, so to speak, and not free to move. But if it's free to move, all of a sudden, boy, there's a lot of energy release there. To clarify, BK says this. He says, in esotericism, we use the word energy to connote the living activity of the spiritual realms, and that of that spiritual entity, the soul. We use the word force to connote activity of the form nature and the realms of the various kingdoms of nature. This is the point of dominant interest and implied distinction. Stimulation might therefore be defined as the effect which energy has upon force. It is the effect which the soul has upon form, which the higher expression of divinity has upon what we call the lower expression. So energy, he sees energy as coming from above, like the soul and spirit, and coming down upon the planes of form and matter and stimulating them and activating the forces there. So you could look at it this way. You're going along and your life is really kind of coasting, and then you get maybe a revelation from your soul on something you're supposed to do. So the energy of your soul makes contact with you while you're in form. And all of a sudden you feel vitalized, and now you feel really enthused about this idea or direction. Your soul is leading you, and you produce forces from within the matter within your body and emotional body and mental body. You gather these forces and you go after manifesting this particular idea using forces, as he talks about it. Interesting kind of view on that. But he talks about energy and force quite often, so it's really important to have an idea on that. He says one more thing about it in esoteric healing. He says, the forces are those energies which are limited and imprisoned within a form of any kind. A body, a plane, an organ, a center, and those energies are streams of directed energy which make impact upon imprisoned forces, from which a greater and more inclusive form from a subtler plane, thus making contact with a grosser vibratory force. An energy is subtler and more potent than a force upon which it makes impact and establishes contact. The force is less potent, but it is anchored. And in those last two words, you have the key to the problem of the relationship of energies. Okay, a force is less potent, but it's anchored. So the difference, one of the main differences, energies are from higher planes, they're not anchored. Forces are like powerful energies that are compacted and anchored here and have to be released. So we have energies from on high coming down, stimulating us, and then releasing forces. So when you get that concept in your mind, it'll really help you understand him when he talks about energies and forces, which he kind of mentions every now and then, but doesn't always explain what they mean. Okay, we must understand ourselves to understand God, he says. He says that's something we can do. He says it's a very simple statement, but very profound. That when we understand ourselves, we understand God. And we could turn that around. If we understood God, we'd understand ourselves. We live in form that disintegrates at death as the vitalizing force escapes. The life principle is the energy behind all the forces of life. So we live in our physical body, and certain amount of force holds it together intact. And this force escapes, and then what happens? Our body just disintegrates, eventually turns to dust, because that force that held it together is gone, but that force was stimulated by the life principle. So the life principle and the forces work together while we're alive. And when the life principle leaves and the forces are more random and the body disintegrates. This life principle in man, he says, manifests in a triple manner. As the spirit in man, number one, as a spirit in man manifesting as a will to live, to be, to act, to pursue, to evolve. In its lowest aspect, this works through the mental body or nature, and connection with the dense physical makes itself felt through the brain. And second, the life principle operates as a coherent force. This force manifests as our emotions and our personality and makes us different from everybody else. It produces also the quality of the appearance of our physical body. And third, the life principle manifests as activity in atoms and cells of which the physical body is composed. Our physical body is a sum total of all kinds of little tiny lives, including our cells, our organs, which have a consciousness of their own. So the life principle manifests as three different ways. And number one, the spirit acting upon man, giving us a will to live. Everybody has that will to live. It's interesting how powerful that is. It's so powerful that we're willing to do anything to continue life in the physical body, because we have that powerful will that acts upon us. And then we have this coherent force that manifests our personality, makes you different than anybody else in the universe. Curtis here is a real character, and we can't find anybody else on the planet that's like him. If you find somebody like him, let me know. It would be very fascinating to watch.
Nobody else would take the job.
And then the final force is that which manifests our physical life. And he says something interesting here, that all these things have a life of their own. They're the atoms, the cells, your organs. He talks about he says the organs have a life of their own and a consciousness which is strictly individual and identified. That's an interesting statement. So let's say, this kind of made me think a little bit, like, let's say you have a problem with your heart or liver or lungs. If you think of them as having a life of their own, well, maybe we ought to talk to them, communicate with them a little bit. Okay, liver, I know I've been kind of hard on you. I've been drinking a little bit too much or eating the wrong foods and giving you too much work to do. I'm sorry about that. But if I treat you a little better, you willing to treat me a little bit better? So just kind of, and this is a little bit the spirit of the Song of Eternal Life that we went through. We say, we praise body, mind, and soul and spirit for receiving without ceasing. We talk about the life energy permeating our entire bodies and minds, bringing health and vitality to all our living parts. And then we talk about praising these things. And that's put in there on purpose, because intelligence is built into our body, and every life form likes to be praised. I mean, when do you feel better than somebody comes up and says to you, boy, you did a really good job on that. Really appreciate it. It really makes you feel good. It doesn't matter how enlightened you are, you still like hearing that. There's nobody, I've never met anyone beyond sincere praise, beyond appreciating sincere praise. Now, if we, being intelligent beings, appreciate it, then our parts of our body will appreciate it too. And this is an important ingredient in the mantra that we're doing, is praise of those ingredients in our body that keep us healthy. Okay, so maybe parts of your body, if they are conscious the way that he says, it's quite possible that some of them feel ignored and abused, and so maybe making you sick is a way for them to get your attention. So look, I'm important too, so I'm going to let you know. I'm going to bring you a little bit of pain so that you know I exist. You know, have you ever had an argument with your spouse saying you're not paying enough attention to me? So you people, people want to know that they're important and that they exist in the other person's mind. And so the various parts of your body are that way too. They want to know that you are willing to care enough for them to take care of them and pay attention to them. Yeah.
I was going to say one of the reasons for reincarnation, for cremation, is that you cut yourself, you cut your soul loose from all these organs in you, so that you're not.
Yeah, let me. I got some sound on there. Sorry about that. Oh, go ahead.
I guess.
Go ahead and repeat that, Stacy. I had something come on automatic pilot there. I don't know what
one of the purposes for cremation is that your organs have their own little lives. So whenever you pass on, you don't want anything dragging you back. So you want to cremate everything to get rid of those little lives so that you can progress forward. That was like a big thing about cremation.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah, Tibetan says cremation is important because the vital body maintains its life essence for some period of time after we die and kind of keeps us earthbound. So it helps to free us up to, especially average people that aren't particularly knowledgeable about that. Cremation really helps to free them from the various lives that you were talking about there. Okay. Okay, he says he will not give out the mantric phrase that's mentioned here. He says few would even understand it. But he should be noted that much in these instructions is advance of modern thought. And he says that a lot of the things that he's teaching back then will be understood near the end of the century. Well, the end of the century is past, and I was looking at this and thinking that do people really understand the things that DK says now a lot more than they did back in the 30s and 40s? I don't know. I don't know if we're as enlightened as he was hoping we would be or not, because there's still a lot of people that don't understand these principles of white magic are very deep and have a lot, takes a lot to understand them. But how much progress do you think we've made in the last 80 years as far as people understanding metaphysical ideas? What do you guys think?
Well, I think that it's in my lifetime.
I think we've come a long way
more than it was.
Yeah.
The other thing is that Lucille Cedercran started teaching in the 50s through the 80s, and she has this one section called the creative process, which is almost identical to what we were just reading.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've definitely made progress. I kind of wonder when I read that. I wonder if we've made as much progress as we hoped for. But especially when you see some of these, like Jay Leno, remember how he used to go interview the man on the street, or some of these college graduates, and ask them who was vice president, and they didn't know, or who fought in World War II, they didn't know that. And when you see how dense some people are, sometimes you wonder if we're really making progress. But there are people, there are more probably enlightened people on the planet now than ever before, which is a positive thing. Sometimes you wonder, but they are definitely there. And the people in this group are a good sign that progress is made in certain segments of society.
Well, we've certainly made a lot of progress with technology. And
Yeah,
our
we
humanity,
certainly, yeah,
our
we made a lot of
humanity,
progress to technology, kind of using it in dumb ways sometimes, but
well, yeah,
I
but it
just read,
leads
I
us
just,
to, go ahead.
yeah, I just read about a new piece of technology. It's kind of made me laugh. This guy invented this software that you take a picture of anybody and it shows what they'd be like nude. And people are so alarmed about it, they're banning this software everywhere. So we're using our intelligence in kind of weird ways sometimes, but the
Is
fact
that
that we
supposed to actually be accurate, or is it just like a gag?
no, it's supposed to be pretty accurate. You know, it assesses their body and what it would most probably look like without clothes on, and it's supposed to be accurate enough to really embarrass people. But yeah, they're trying to ban this everywhere. I mean, everybody's really upset about this, and you can't buy this software anywhere right now. Because people are so alarmed by it. But as what happens once the genie is out of the bottle, we're probably going to see more of that surface.
Just imagine in 5 years, people walking around with those Google glasses, and they just set it to
Yeah.
like naked mode and see everybody naked, or the projection of naked.
Yeah, I remember when I was a teenager, all of us guys were thinking, boy, it'd be cool if we had glasses like that, you know. But those type of glasses probably will really sell. Well, probably the governments will try to ban them, but you know, bans like that never work completely.
You won't have to imagine the audience in their underwear anymore when you give a speech.
Yeah, you go with glasses and everybody's everybody's naked. That would be kind of funny. But yeah, that'd be a good joke to start off with, saying, you know, the old thing, if you're nervous about giving a talk, imagine everybody in their underwear. Well, I'm really seeing all of you in your underwear. That would get a rise out of everybody, wouldn't it? But yeah, anyway, we're using technology in kind of silly ways sometimes. So the fact that we've got all this intelligence incorporated doesn't necessarily mean we have the wisdom to go along with it. But
That's because our technology is ahead of our humanity. So humanity has to catch up to its technology, like with Facebook.
Yeah, maybe we got it all from the space aliens, the way some people think. Who knows? So he says these rules that he's given us will have different meanings to people in different places on the path. He says to the person that's fairly intelligent, but not really into the soul levels, it won't mean very much at all. And I've met some people that kind of read the Tibetan as a mental exercise, but don't seem to get any spiritual principles out of it. And so these type of people, they don't get a lot out of it. Now the aspirant, and the aspirant has some connection to the soul. He will receive some practical ideas, he says, from these lessons on white magic. The disciple, who's more soul infused, he will see potent instructions that will lead him to an understanding of the process of the creative work in nature, which is necessarily sealed to the lesser evolved. Okay, so once a person gets pretty solid soul contract, he's going to get some good ideas from these about how to improve his ability to be a creator. The high initiate, he says, will discern greater things through the intuition. He says the more closer the person is to spirit and soul, the more he will get out of what the Tibetan says. And he says he's trying to gear his explanation so the aspirant or people with some degree of soul contact will get something out of what he's trying to teach. Okay. next week we'll end here, and we're gonna start off examining the rule in more detail. And he goes into pretty good detail in going through this. Before we end, do we have any questions or comments on what we covered so far here? Okay, there's a lot of meat in this thing, and we're at an important point, and coming to the point where we take our creation. You get an idea, something you want to create, and you get inspiration as about how to make it serviceable and profitable for others besides yourself, and how it can be a benefit to humanity. And you put thought and energy into it on from the emotional level to the mental level, and then apply labor on the physical level, and you get everything together, and you get it all ready to manifest, and that's where we are. So that's where we'll leave off here, and we'll go into this in more detail next week. Okay. Appreciate everybody being here. If you don't have any more comments or questions, we'll sign off.
Everybody creates anyway, and it's best to do it consciously.
Right, and that's one thing he points out, is that people use these rules unconsciously, but once we learn the conscious principles and establish it in our consciousness, then we'll be much more powerful creators.
Conscious creators in matter. That's what it says. Become conscious creators in matter in the material worlds. Energy following thought until you manifest whatever you envision.
Yeah, that energy following thought is probably the most important principle of creation there is. I still contemplate that, on a regular basis myself. There's a lot of inspiration to be had from that one sentence.
Ernest Holmes has what's called the spiritual mind treatment in the science of mind, which is very much like this. So the truth is out there.
Yeah, what he's talked about in this lesson, other people have talked about in various types of languages, like Napoleon Hill and Ernest Holmes and Dale Carnegie and different people. Okay. Joshua says the truth is out there. Okay.
Let's go find it.
Hey, I have a question.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Like when you're saying like starting a business and manifesting that. We started a business and I thought, okay, we're gonna do this business and everything, so I don't have to work that much. Well, that didn't work out.
Yeah, I had the same idea in starting my business too. So.
Well, I did it too, so I could do more service, like helping other people, being able to do volunteer work, and that's why I really wanted to grow the business. We had the business, but I wanted to grow the business. But I've come to find out that, which is really interesting, is that the people that we are hiring need light. So it's like things that they've been through has been like super hard times, like addiction and different things that are attracted in, but their willingness to work hard and to continue to grow with the business, it's interesting and it's awesome. But it's kind of like that I'm doing volunteer work in my way with interacting with these girls, and we have a guy also, and I can just see them gravitating towards more light. Like, it's been really interesting. So I'm hoping that is still going to continue to be the case, but instead of me going off and doing volunteer work, I'm kind of like guiding with these gals,
So in other words, you started the business in hopes of getting more time to be of service, but you wound up being so involved in your business that you wind up serving the people that you hire. Is that what you're saying pretty much?
Exactly. And I think it's just a really cool blessing that it's like, because it's a cleaning business, so I'm teaching them how to, detailing, it's more than that. But so like detailing your car, people detail their cars, but they don't detail their homes. So we're doing that. And I'm sitting next to them, you know, showing them and then talking, and they just tell me everything, like everything. Then it's been quite interesting how it's kind of changed, that I'm not like going off and doing as much as the volunteer work that I wanted to do, which I still want to do. But it's like today learning that we are lights that need to shine for other people. And it's like they're kind of gravitating towards it. And it's been really cool. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's purpose too.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we all have dreams of being able to make great change in the world. But what we have to do is not miss the opportunities, the small opportunities that present themselves in our daily lives. There's always something we can do for our children, grandchildren, our friends, our neighbors, people we work with. And I've always, a piece of enlightenment that came to me was, which I thought was quite profound, was that if everybody helped people just within their circle, the whole universe would be taken care of. You know, we talk about, well, we need the government to step in and do this so that people can be taken care of. But if everybody did what they could to help people within their circle of friends and associates, then everybody be taken care of. And but the fact that the world suffers so much is a testimony against you know, average people just not doing their job good enough, you know. And so,
Well, in other words, use whatever business you're in, or whatever position you have in whatever business you're in. Use that position to be a blessing to those who cross your path or that you encounter. Like in a cleaning business, you're gonna all your clients are gonna be looking at you, and they're gonna say, "Wow, there's something about Marcus here that, you know, that she's radiating. You know, she's putting a spin on me. I don't know what she's doing. She's casting a spell." Right, but you have to use wherever you're at in the moment to make the difference, not project some downrange situation. Use where you're at right now to be a blessing.
Yeah, I think Janet and Marcus can identify with you there, because I know, or you can, because I know you talk to a lot of people you do business with and talk to them about all kinds of things, don't you?
Yeah, give them stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just give them a box of apricots, and, you know, it's a physical thing, and it makes a difference for them. It doesn't have to be, you know, some deep philosophical conversation. Just, you know, you're just helping people with whatever they need in the moment that gives them a little lift.
That's true.
Bottle of
Okay,
jam.
we're running low on time here. Any other comments or questions before we sign off?
I just in the restructuring of the triads and whatnot, and then Ed has found a partner in a different triad, and I'm hoping that he will be our synaptic link or whatever with his new triad, and he'll stay on as an associate. So he'll be our interconnection between two triads with his permission.
Okay, yeah, we have some vacancies, but you know, we have some new people, or people not connected. So I think we ought to be able to start filling in the gaps here pretty soon. So let's focus on that. We'll try to get
Double thumbs up.
get you complete. Go. If you have a vacancy in your triad, look over the list. I'll post that list after the meeting, and look over the list of the people that aren't connected, and maybe get a hold of them and see if they're interested, and we'll go from there.
All right.
Okay. Well, good to see everybody again. We had a good group.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Great job, Joe. Nice presentation.
Nice to see you
Thank you.
guys.
You're welcome.
Nice to
Yeah,
see you,
good to see
everyone.
again. And good to see old Nick there, and Eva and John.